Samuel Washington's hands trembled as he tried to endorse the check. Not from fear. The 71-year-old Korean War veteran had faced down enemy fire at Porkchop Hill and lived through the integration riots in Alabama, but from Parkinson's disease that had been slowly stealing his motor control for the past 3 years. The pen slipped, leaving a jagged line across the signature box. "Damn it," he muttered, reaching for another deposit slip. The check was for $47,000, his life savings, finally released from the pension fund after months of paperwork and phone calls. Samuel had plans for that money. Repairs on the house his parents had bought in 1955, the one place in Chicago where he'd always felt safe. Medical bills from his last hospital stay, maybe even a trip to see his granddaughter in Atlanta before his hands got too bad to hold her. He'd dressed carefully that morning in his one good suit, the navy blue one he wore to church on Easter and Christmas. His shoes were polished to a military shine, despite the arthritis in his knees making him bend slowly, carefully. His silver star pin was affixed to his lapel. Samuel Washington believed in showing respect, even to a bank that probably didn't respect him back. The lobby of Centurion Trust Bank was all marble and glass, designed to intimidate. Samuel had walked past it 100 times, always using the small community bank on the corner where the tellers knew his name. But Centurion was where the pension fund had issued the check, so Centurion was where he had to cash it. He finally managed to sign the check on his third attempt and joined the line. It moved slowly. The woman ahead of him was arguing about account fees. The man behind him kept sighing dramatically, as if Samuel's existence was a personal inconvenience. When Samuel finally reached the counter, the teller, a young man with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that looked practiced in a mirror, barely glanced up. "How can I help you?" The words were right, but the tone was automatic, bored. "Good morning," Samuel said, his voice still carrying the slight southern drawl of his Alabama childhood. "I'd like to deposit this check, please." He slid the check across the counter. The teller, whose nameplate read Jason Mitchell, Senior Banking Associate, picked it up with 2 fingers as if it might be contaminated. $47,000, Jason said, his eyebrows rising. "That's quite a sum." "Yes, sir. It's my pension. Been waiting 3 months for it to clear." Jason's expression shifted subtly, his eyes traveling from Samuel's trembling hands to his worn suit to the slight shake in his head that Samuel couldn't control anymore. "I see. And you have an account here with Centurion Trust?" "No, sir. But the check is drawn on this bank, so I thought—" "You thought you could just walk in and cash a check for $47,000 without an account?" Jason's voice had taken on an edge. "Sir, we have protocols, security measures. This isn't a check-cashing store." Samuel felt his cheeks warm. "I understand. I can open an account if that's what's needed. I brought my identification, my social security card." "That's not really the point," Jason interrupted. He held the check up to the light, examining it theatrically. "This check, where did you say you got it again?" "It's my pension, from the Veterans Benefit Administration. I served in Korea." "Korea," Jason repeated, as if testing the word for lies. "And they just sent you $47,000? It's 20 years of back benefits. There was an error in my original paperwork. They miscalculated my disability rating. Once they corrected it—" "Uh-huh." Jason was typing now, his fingers moving rapidly across his keyboard. "And you're saying this is legitimate?" Samuel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Of course it's legitimate. I earned that money. I served my country for 4 years. came home with shrapnel in my leg and nightmares that never stopped. That money is mine." "Sir, please don't raise your voice," Jason said, though Samuel had barely been speaking above normal volume. "I'm simply following procedure. A check this size, from someone without an account, no banking history with us, it raises red flags." "Red flags?" Samuel repeated quietly. "Fraud, identity theft, stolen checks." Jason leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "We see it all the time. Someone gets their hands on a legitimate-looking check, tries to cash it before anyone realizes it's fake." "This isn't fake," Samuel said, and now his voice did rise slightly. "I can show you the paperwork. I have letters from the VA. Documentation." "Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down." Jason cut him off. Around them, other customers were starting to turn, starting to watch. Samuel felt their eyes like weights. "Getting agitated isn't going to help your case." "My case?" Samuel's heart was pounding now. "I'm not on trial. I'm trying to deposit my own money." "The money you claim is yours," Jason corrected, "but I have no way to verify that. For all I know, you found this check, or you're working with someone who stole it, or you're part of some kind of fraud ring targeting veterans' benefits." The words hit Samuel like physical blows. He faced down Chinese soldiers at 19 years old. He'd marched with Martin Luther King Jr. in Birmingham in 1963 and taken a police baton to the ribs. He'd buried his wife after 46 years of marriage and held himself together for his children. But standing in this bank, being accused of theft by a kid who looked young enough to be his grandson, Samuel felt something inside him start to crack. "I earned this money," he said, and his voice shook now with something between rage and desperation. "I bled for this country. I gave it my youth, my health, my peace of mind. And you're standing there telling me I stole my own pension? I'm telling you I can't process this check," Jason said flatly. "Not without verification, which could take days, weeks even." "I need this money," Samuel said quietly. "My house needs repairs. I have medical bills. I've been waiting 3 months already." "Then you can wait a little longer," Jason interrupted. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. There are other customers waiting." Samuel looked at the line behind him. A woman in a designer suit was checking her phone impatiently. A man in a business casual outfit was shaking his head with visible disgust. They weren't seeing a veteran, a man who'd served his country with honor. They were seeing an old black man causing a scene, holding up the line, probably trying to pull some kind of scam. "Please," Samuel said, and he hated the pleading in his voice. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want to deposit my check. Can't you just verify it? Call the VA? Something?" "Sir, step aside," Jason repeated, louder now, "or I'll have to call security." That's when Samuel heard it. The voice that cut through the marble lobby like a blade through silk. Cold, controlled, absolutely lethal. "You're going to call security on a 70-year-old veteran for trying to deposit his own pension check?" Samuel turned, along with everyone else in the bank. The man who'd spoken was standing 3 people back in line. He was in his mid-40s, Korean, with sharp features and eyes so dark they looked black. His suit was immaculate, clearly expensive, and he wore it with the kind of casual confidence that came from never questioning whether he belonged somewhere. Jin Park had been watching the interaction with growing fury. He'd come to the bank for a routine wire transfer related to his legitimate businesses. The restaurants, the real estate holdings, the import company that actually did import legal goods. But he'd looked up at the wrong moment, or perhaps the right one. and seen an elderly black veteran being humiliated by a punk kid with a power complex. Jin knew something about being judged on appearance. He'd arrived in Chicago at 16, speaking broken English, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a phone number for a distant cousin who ran a restaurant. He'd worked his way up through hard work, smart investments, and yes, connections to the Korean organized crime network that controlled certain territories in the city. But he'd also learned to recognize real dignity when he saw it, and the old man at the counter had it in spades. "Excuse me?" Jason said, his tone dismissive. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "I'm making it concern me," Jin interrupted, stepping out of line and walking forward. As he moved, Samuel noticed details. The way other customers instinctively cleared a path. The way the security guard by the door suddenly looked nervous. The way Jason's confident smirk faltered just slightly. "Mr. Park," Jason said, and now his voice had changed completely. Deferential, almost fearful. "I didn't realize you were here. If you'd like, I can have someone assist you immediately." "I don't need assistance," Jin said coldly. "But apparently Mr." He glanced at Samuel questioningly. "Washington," Samuel supplied quietly. "Samuel Washington." "Mr. Washington needs assistance," Jin continued, his eyes never leaving Jason. "And instead of providing it, you're accusing him of fraud. Is that correct?" "I was simply following protocol." "Protocol," Jin repeated, his voice dropping even colder. "Tell me, is it protocol to publicly accuse customers of theft without evidence? Is it protocol to refuse service based on age, on race?" "I never said anything about race." "You didn't have to," Jin cut him off. "I've been standing in this line for 15 minutes. I watched you help the woman before Mr. Washington. White woman, designer handbag, check for $32,000. You processed it in 5 minutes without a single question. But Mr. Washington tries to deposit a check, drawn on your own bank, and suddenly it's fraud. Identity theft? Please, explain the difference to me." Jason's face had gone pale. "Mr. Park, I assure you, show me his check," Jin demanded. "Sir, I can't just..." Jin pulled out his phone. "Would you prefer I call Preston Centurion directly? I have him on speed dial. We play golf every Thursday. I'm sure he'd love to hear about how his senior banking associate is refusing service to a decorated war veteran." Samuel watched in amazement as Jason's hands actually shook, reaching for the check. He handed it to Jin, who examined it briefly. "Veterans Benefit Administration, official treasury check, watermarks intact, routing numbers valid." Jin looked up at Jason. "What exactly is suspicious about this?" "The amount is well documented," Jin interrupted. "These VA back payment cases are common. The government miscalculates disability ratings, takes years to correct the error, then releases a lump sum. It's in the news constantly. You'd know that if you paid attention to anything beyond harassing elderly customers." He handed the check back to Samuel, then turned to Jason. "You're going to process this check. Now. Full deposit, no holds, no verification delays. And then you're going to apologize to Mr. Washington for wasting his time and insulting his integrity." "Mr. Park, I really don't think I have the authority." "Then get someone who does," Jin said flatly. Jason's hands trembled as he picked up his phone. Let me call my manager." As they waited, Jin turned to Samuel. His expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained hard. "Mr. Washington, I apologize you had to deal with this. It's unacceptable." "You didn't have to do that," Samuel said quietly. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Jin replied. "You served in Korea?" "Yes, sir. 1st Marine Division, 1952 to 1956. Something shifted in Jin's expression. My grandfather was in Korea during the war. He was just a child, but he remembered the Marines. He said they were the reason his village survived. He paused. He always spoke about the black soldiers especially, said they fought harder than anyone, got less credit than anyone. Samuel felt his throat tighten. Not many people know that, or care. I care, Jin said simply. And that punk kid at the counter is going to care too by the time I'm done with him. The manager arrived, a nervous woman in her 50s who took one look at Jin Park and immediately began apologizing. The check was processed in under 10 minutes. Jason was sent to the back office, and Samuel walked out of Centurion Trust Bank with a deposit receipt for $47,000 and a business card that simply read Jin Park with a phone number. If anyone gives you trouble, Jin said as they stood outside in the morning sun, you call me, understand? Samuel looked at the card, then at the man who'd just defended him. Why? Why did you do this? Jin was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. Because 25 years ago, I was a kid who barely spoke English, trying to open a bank account so I could deposit my first paycheck. The bank manager took one look at me and called immigration. Turned out I was legal, just had an accent. But he didn't care. He saw a Korean kid and assumed I was illegal, assumed I was trouble. He looked at Samuel. Someone stood up for me that day, told that manager exactly what he could do with his assumptions. I never forgot it. Who was it? Samuel asked. Who helped you? Jin smiled slightly. A 70-year-old black veteran. Looked a lot like you, actually. Said he didn't fight in 2 wars, so punks could disrespect people based on how they looked. He paused. His name was Sergeant Morrison. He died 5 years ago, but I made him a promise before he passed, that I'd pay it forward, that I'd stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. Samuel felt tears threatening. I don't know what to say. Say you'll call me if you need anything, Jin replied. And Mr. Washington? Thank you for your service. Really. As Jin walked to his car, a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who looked like he moonlighted as a bodyguard, Samuel stood on the sidewalk, his hands still trembling, but his heart somehow lighter. He had no idea that his life had just intersected with one of Chicago's most dangerous men. And he had no idea that what started as a simple act of kindness was about to become something much more complicated. Like this video, if you believe respect has no age limit and no color line. 2 weeks passed before Samuel saw Jin Park again. The money from his pension was safe in a new account at the community bank, and Samuel had started making the repairs on his house. New roof, fixed plumbing. He'd even splurged on a ramp for the front steps since his knees were getting worse. But he couldn't stop thinking about the man who'd defended him. There was something about Jin Park that didn't quite add up. The way Jason had reacted to his name, the way other people in the bank had stepped aside, the casual mention of playing golf with the bank's owner. Samuel had been around long enough to recognize power when he saw it, and Jin Park had it in spades. So when Samuel answered his door on a Tuesday afternoon to find Jin standing there, he wasn't entirely surprised. Mr. Washington, Jin said, and he looked almost embarrassed. I hope I'm not intruding. How did you know where I live? Samuel asked, though not unkindly. I may have looked up your address, Jin admitted. I wanted to check on you, make sure that the bank situation doesn't cause any more problems. Samuel studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. Come in. I'll make coffee. Jin's eyes scanned the interior as they walked to the kitchen, not suspicious exactly, but observant, taking in the old furniture, the photos on the walls, the evidence of a life lived modestly, but with dignity. You have a beautiful home, Jin said, and he sounded sincere. It was my parents' house, Samuel explained, filling the coffee pot. They bought it in 1955, first black family on the block. Had bricks thrown through the windows for the first 2 years, but they held on, raised 5 kids here. He paused. I'm the only one left now. My siblings all moved away. Better jobs, safer neighborhoods. But I couldn't leave. Too many memories. I understand, Jin said quietly. My restaurant, the first one I ever owned, is in a building everyone told me to tear down. Structurally unsound, bad location, not worth the investment. But it was where my cousin gave me my first job in America, where I learned English by taking orders, where I became American. I couldn't let it go. They sat at Samuel's kitchen table, drinking coffee, and for a while, they just talked. About Korea, about Chicago, about the strangeness of getting older in a city that seemed to forget you existed. Can I ask you something? Samuel said finally. That day at the bank, Jason, the manager, they were terrified of you. Why? Jin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I have business interests in the city. I've been successful. That comes with a certain reputation. What kind of business interests? Restaurants mostly. Some real estate. Import-export. Jin paused. And some things I'm not particularly proud of. Samuel waited, letting the silence stretch. Mr. Washington, I'm going to be honest with you because I think you deserve that, Jin said finally. I'm involved with people most would call criminals. I run protection rackets. I facilitate certain transactions that exist in gray legal areas. I've hurt people who crossed me. I'm not a good man by most standards. But, Samuel prompted, but I live by certain rules, Jin continued. I don't deal drugs. I don't traffic in human misery. I protect my neighborhood, my people. And I don't tolerate disrespect of those who deserve respect. He looked directly at Samuel, like veterans who gave everything for a country that treats them like criminals. Samuel absorbed this. He should have been shocked, maybe even afraid. Instead, he felt oddly calm. You're telling me you're with the Korean mob? Yes, Jin said simply, and you're sitting in my kitchen drinking my coffee. Yes. Why? Samuel asked. Why are you really here? Jin was quiet for a long moment. Because that day at the bank, when I saw you being humiliated, when I saw that punk kid treating you like you were worthless, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Why I do what I do. It's easy to become the thing you fight against, to get lost in power and money and forget what matters. He leaned forward. You reminded me, Mr. Washington. You stood there with your head high, even when that kid was calling you a thief. You kept your dignity even when everyone around you had written you off. That's real strength. The kind I used to have before I got so caught up in the business that I forgot what honor actually looks like. So this is about your conscience, Samuel observed. Maybe, Jin admitted. Or maybe I'm just tired of watching good people get crushed by systems that don't give a damn about them. He paused. Can I ask you something? Why did you dress up for the bank? The suit, the polished shoes, the military pin? Samuel smiled slightly. Because my father taught me that respect is something you give yourself first. He said the world will try to tell you you're not worth anything, especially if you're black, especially if you're poor. But if you show up with dignity, if you demand respect through your bearing and your actions, sometimes the world will give it to you. Did it work? Jin asked. Before I intervened? No, Samuel said honestly. That kid saw an old black man trying to scam $47,000. My suit didn't matter. My service didn't matter. I was invisible to him. Or worse, visible only as a threat. Jin's jaw tightened. That's going to change. You can't change the world, Mr. Park. No, Jin agreed. But I can change my piece of it. And Mr. Washington, you're in my piece now. Samuel should have been worried about what that meant. Instead, he poured them both more coffee and asked Jin about his restaurants. And for the first time since his wife died, Samuel didn't feel quite so alone. What Samuel didn't know was that Jason Mitchell, the banking associate who'd humiliated him, had been having a very bad 2 weeks. He'd been demoted, relocated to a branch in the suburbs with half the salary. And everywhere he went, he found doors closing, opportunities evaporating. Word had spread, you don't disrespect people Jin Park cares about. And what Jin didn't know was that Samuel's simple act of maintaining his dignity, of refusing to be broken by a system designed to break people like him, was about to inspire something much bigger than either of them could imagine. The third time Samuel and Jin met, it wasn't planned. Samuel was at the grocery store, navigating the aisles slowly with his cart, when he heard shouting near the front. I don't care what your policy is. That price is wrong and you know it. Samuel recognized the voice before he saw the face. An elderly Korean woman, probably in her 80s, was arguing with a store manager over a package of meat. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with her white hair pulled back in a neat bun. She held the package in one hand and a crumpled sales flyer in the other. Ma'am, the sale ended yesterday, the manager said, his voice dripping with condescension. Today it's full price. If you can't afford it, maybe you should shop somewhere else. The sign says sale until the 15th, the woman insisted, her English heavily accented but clear. Today is the 14th. You are cheating. I'm not cheating anyone, the manager snapped. And if you don't like it, you can leave. We don't need your business. Samuel felt something familiar stir in his chest. The same anger he'd felt at the bank. The same recognition of a person being dismissed, devalued, treated as less than human because they were old, because they spoke with an accent, because they didn't have the power to fight back. He walked over slowly, his cart rattling. Excuse me, is there a problem? The manager looked at him with barely concealed irritation. This doesn't concern you. The sign by the meat counter says the sale runs through the 15th, Samuel said calmly. I saw it when I walked in. She's right. The sign is wrong, the manager said flatly. Then you need to honor the wrong sign, Samuel replied. False advertising is illegal. You can't post a sale date and then refuse to honor it. The manager's face flushed. Who the hell are you? The price police? I'm a customer, Samuel said, and I'm watching you treat this lady with disrespect. The same way someone treated me with disrespect 2 weeks ago at a bank. You know what happened to that person? I don't care. He lost his job. Samuel interrupted quietly, because someone more powerful than him decided that disrespecting elders wasn't acceptable. Now, you want to keep arguing, or you want to sell this lady her meat at the sale price. The manager stared at him, clearly trying to decide if Samuel was bluffing. But something in Samuel's eyes, some steel that hadn't been there during his own humiliation, some borrowed confidence from knowing Jin Park had his back, made the manager hesitate. Fine, he snapped, snatching the package. Sale price. Whatever. The Korean woman looked at Samuel with surprise and gratitude. Thank you. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did, Samuel said gently. Someone did it for me recently. Figured it was time to pay it forward. They walked out of the store together, the woman moving slowly with a cane, Samuel pushing his cart carefully to match her pace. "You said someone helped you," she said. "At a bank?" "Yes, ma'am. A man named Jin Park. He stood up for me when I was being treated badly." The woman stopped walking. She turned to look at him fully, her eyes sharp despite her age. "Jin Park helped you?" "Yes, ma'am. You know him?" "He is my grandson," she said quietly. Samuel felt the world tilt slightly. "Your grandson?" "Yes. I am Park Yunji, Jin's Halmione, grandmother." She studied Samuel carefully. "You are the veteran, the one from the bank. He spoke of you." "He did?" "He said he met someone who reminded him why we came to this country, someone who kept their dignity even when the world tried to take it." She paused. "He said you reminded him of his grandfather. That is the highest compliment my grandson gives." Samuel felt his throat tighten. "He's a good man, your grandson." "He is a complicated man," Park Yunji corrected. "Good and bad together, like most people. But yes, there is goodness in him. Sometimes he forgets. You reminded him." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small business card, the same one Jin had given Samuel. "You have this already, yes?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. You use it if you need help. Jin will come." She smiled slightly. "He does not come for many people, but he will come for you." As Samuel drove home, his mind was spinning. He'd just met Jin Park's grandmother. He'd defended her the way Jin had defended him. It felt like the universe was weaving something together, connecting threads he couldn't quite see yet. When he got home, his phone was ringing. Jin's number. "Mr. Washington." Jin's voice was warm. "My grandmother just called me. She said you defended her at a grocery store." "I just did what anyone should do," Samuel said. "But most people don't," Jin replied. "Most people see an old Korean woman arguing with a manager and they walk past. They don't want to get involved. But you did. You stood up for her." "She stood up for herself first," Samuel said. "I just backed her up. Same as you did for me." "Mr. Washington, are you free for dinner tomorrow night?" Jin asked. "My grandmother would like to cook for you. It's how she shows gratitude. And truthfully, I'd like you to meet some people, friends of mine who I think would appreciate meeting you." Samuel hesitated. Meeting Jin Park's friends felt like crossing a line, moving from a chance encounter into something more intentional, more complicated. "I promise," Jin added, sensing his hesitation. "No business will be discussed. No pressure. Just dinner with an old woman who wants to thank the man who stood up for her, and maybe some good conversation." "All right," Samuel said finally. "What time?" The next evening, Samuel found himself at an address in Koreatown, a modest building above one of Jin's restaurants. He climbed the stairs slowly, his knees protesting, and knocked. Jin opened the door, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. Behind him, Samuel could smell incredible food: garlic, sesame oil, something spicy and savory that made his mouth water. "Mr. Washington, welcome," Jin said warmly. "Come in." The apartment was small but immaculate. Park Yoon-ji was in the kitchen, moving between pots with the efficiency of someone who'd been cooking for 70 years. She smiled when she saw Samuel. "The veteran," she said. "Come, sit. You are too skinny. I feed you." Two other people were already there. A Korean man in his 60s, introduced as Mr. Kim, who owned a dry cleaning business, and a younger man, maybe 30, named David, who Jin described simply as an associate. They sat around a table laden with food: bulgogi, kimchi, rice, soup, banchan dishes Samuel couldn't name. But that tasted incredible. For a while, they just ate and talked about nothing important: the weather, the city, memories of Korea, both the old Korea and the new one that existed in news reports and occasional visits. Then Park Yoon-ji spoke, her voice soft, but carrying authority. "My grandson tells me you were a Marine in Korea." "Yes, ma'am. 1952 to 1956. You fought at Pork Chop Hill?" Samuel was surprised. Most Americans didn't know that battle's name. "Yes, ma'am. March and April of 1953. Park Yoon-ji was quiet for a moment. "My father died at Pork Chop Hill. He was in the South Korean Army, fighting alongside the Americans." She looked at Samuel directly. "He told my mother, before he went to fight, that the Black Marines were the bravest men he'd ever seen, that they fought for a country that didn't respect them, but they fought with honor anyway." Samuel felt his eyes burning. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am." "It was long ago," she said, "but I never forgot his words. When Jin told me about you, about what happened at the bank, I thought, here is one of those men, still fighting, still keeping his honor." She reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you for fighting for my country, and thank you for fighting for me yesterday." The conversation that followed was unlike anything Samuel had expected. Mr. Kim talked about his struggles starting his dry cleaning business, the banks that wouldn't give him loans, the customers who refused to be served by someone who looked foreign. David spoke about growing up Korean American, caught between cultures, never quite Korean enough for his parents or American enough for his peers. And Jin talked about his grandfather, the one who'd survived the war. "He used to tell me that honor wasn't about being perfect. It was about standing up when standing up mattered, even when it costs you, especially when it costs you." "That's what your generation did," he said, looking at Samuel. "You fought wars nobody wanted, came home to countries that didn't want you, and you kept going anyway, kept your dignity anyway. That's what I want to learn from you, Mr. Washington, how to keep that honor even when the world tries to beat it out of you." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "You don't learn it," he said finally. "You choose it. Every day. Every moment. Someone disrespects you. You choose to stay dignified. Someone tries to break you. You choose to stay whole. It's not easy. Some days you fail, but you keep choosing." "And when you don't have the power to make that choice?" Jin asked. "When the system is designed to break you, then you find people who will stand with you," Samuel said. "Like you stood with me, like I stood with your grandmother. We can't fight these systems alone. But together," he paused, "together we might have a chance." Jin looked at him with something like wonder. "Mr. Washington, would you be willing to meet with me regularly? Talk with me about these things? I'm trying to build something in this neighborhood, something better than what I've been doing. But I don't always know how. I need perspective from someone who's been fighting longer than I have." Samuel should have said no, should have recognized that getting deeper into Jin Park's world was dangerous, complicated, potentially illegal. But he looked around that table, at Jin, at his grandmother, at the other men who'd been trying to build lives in a city that didn't always want them. And he saw himself, saw the same fight for dignity, for respect, for the basic human right to exist without being diminished. "Yes," he said, "I'll help however I can." What Samuel didn't know was that this simple agreement was about to put him at the center of something much bigger. That Jin Park's business associates had enemies, that those enemies would see Samuel as a weakness to exploit, and that sometimes standing up for what's right meant standing in the line of fire. The attacks started small. A brick through Samuel's window one night, with no note, no explanation. Just broken glass and the clear message, "You're being watched." Samuel called Jin, who arrived within 20 minutes with David and 2 other men. They boarded up the window and installed a security camera. Jin wanted to post guards, but Samuel refused. "I won't live like a prisoner," he said firmly. "Then live like someone who's protected," Jin countered. "Please, let me do this." They compromised. Cameras, but no guards. A direct line to Jin's phone, and a promise from Samuel that he'd call at the first sign of more trouble. The second incident was worse. Samuel's car, the 2004 Honda he'd been driving for 15 years, was vandalized in the grocery store parking lot. All 4 tires slashed, windows smashed, the word snitch spray painted across the hood. This time, Samuel didn't have to call. Jin was there before the police, looking at the damage with a fury that made his men step back. "Who did this?" Samuel asked quietly. "I have suspicions," Jin said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "There's a Russian crew operating on the north side. We've had territorial disputes. They know I've been spending time in this neighborhood, that I've been protective of certain people." He looked at Samuel. "They're sending a message through you." "What kind of message?" "That I'm going soft. That I care more about playing community hero than protecting my business interests." Jin's jaw clenched. "They're wrong, but they're also partially right. I have been paying more attention to helping people than to maintaining my territory. It created an opening." "So this is my fault," Samuel said. "No," Jin said sharply. "This is the fault of men who think they can intimidate me by going after people I care about. They're about to learn otherwise." "Jin, I don't want anyone hurt because of me." "It's too late for that," Jin interrupted. "You're part of my world now, whether we planned it or not. These people, they don't see you as some innocent old veteran. They see you as leverage against me, which means I need to make it very clear that you're under my protection and that harming you would be the last mistake they ever make." Samuel felt cold despite the afternoon heat. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done weeks ago," Jin said. "I'm going to remind certain people why they were afraid of me in the first place." Over the next week, Samuel watched as Jin transformed. The man who'd sat at his kitchen table drinking coffee, who'd introduced him to his grandmother with gentle pride, became something harder, colder. There were meetings at odd hours, phone calls in rapid Korean that ended with sharp commands, men coming and going from Jin's restaurant with tense faces. And then, abruptly, it stopped. No more vandalism. No more bricks through windows. Samuel asked Jin what had happened, but Jin just smiled tightly and said, "Let's just say we reached an understanding." But Samuel read the newspapers. He saw the story about the Russian nightclub that had been raided by federal agents, the owner arrested on weapons charges. He saw the report about a shipment of stolen electronics intercepted at the port, 3 men taken into custody. And he understood, with a cold certainty, that Jin Park had just destroyed his enemies with surgical precision. "You didn't have to do that," Samuel said when they next met at the restaurant. "Yes, I did," Jin replied. "They threatened you. That made it personal. I'm not worth starting a war over." Jin looked at him with something almost like anger. "Don't ever say that again. You stood up for my grandmother when you had nothing to gain from it. You treated her with dignity when that manager saw her as nothing. In my world, in my culture, that creates a debt, a bond. You don't break those bonds. Samuel wanted to argue, but he saw the intensity in Jin's eyes and recognized it. The same intensity he'd felt when his platoon brothers were in danger in Korea. The fierce loyalty that transcends logic, that makes you willing to fight for people who matter to you, even when it doesn't make sense. "All right," Samuel said quietly. "But Jin, this can't keep happening. You can't keep fighting my battles." "Then let me teach you to fight them yourself," Jin said. "Or better, let's fight them together." That conversation led to something Samuel never expected. Jin started bringing him to community meetings in Koreatown. Not mob meetings, real community discussions about neighborhood problems. Korean business owners struggling with discrimination. Elderly immigrants being targeted by scams. Young people caught between gangs and poverty with no good options. And Samuel found himself speaking up, sharing his own experiences, the decades of fighting for dignity, the strategies that worked, the mistakes he'd made. People listened. An old black veteran and a Korean mob boss, an unlikely partnership. But somehow it worked. They started a program, completely legitimate, funded by Jin's legal businesses, offering support to elderly immigrants, help with paperwork, translation services, legal assistance, protection from scams. Park Yoon-ji became involved, organizing the Korean grandmothers. Samuel reached out to his church, bringing in the black elders. It should have been simple. Help people who needed help. But nothing involving Jin Park stayed simple for long. The trouble came from an unexpected direction. Not rival gangs or criminals, but from the police. Detective Marcus Rivera had been watching Jin Park for 5 years, waiting for the mistake that would bring him down. Jin was careful, insulated by layers of legitimate business and loyal associates. But Rivera was patient, and when he saw Jin spending time with an elderly black veteran, meeting regularly with community groups, funding programs for immigrants, he saw something that looked like a front. Money laundering, perhaps, or recruiting. So, Rivera decided to apply pressure at the weakest point. Samuel Washington. The knock came early one morning. Samuel opened his door to find 2 detectives on his porch, badges already out. "Mr. Washington, I'm Detective Rivera. This is Detective Chen. We'd like to ask you some questions about Jin Park." Samuel felt his stomach drop, but he kept his voice steady. "What about him?" "Can we come in?" Rivera asked, though it wasn't really a question. They sat in Samuel's living room, the detectives on the couch that had been there since 1987, Samuel in his worn recliner. Rivera pulled out a notebook. "You've been spending a lot of time with Mr. Park," Rivera began, "meeting at his restaurant, attending events together, working on community programs. Is there a law against having friends?" Samuel asked. "No, sir," Rivera said smoothly. "But Mr. Park isn't just any friend. He's a person of interest in multiple ongoing investigations, racketeering, extortion, money laundering. And you, Mr. Washington, are a decorated veteran with no criminal record, which makes us wonder what someone like you is doing with someone like him." Samuel chose his words carefully. "Jin Park helped me when I was being mistreated at a bank. Since then, we've become friends. We work together on legitimate community programs helping elderly immigrants and veterans. That's all? That's all?" Detective Chen spoke for the first time. "Mr. Washington, we know about the vandalism. The brick through your window, your car being destroyed. That happened right after you started associating with Park. Doesn't that concern you?" "It concerned me very much," Samuel said. "But it stopped. It stopped because Park made it stop," Rivera said, "which means he used violence, intimidation, or worse, and you benefited from that. Some might say that makes you complicit. Samuel felt anger rising, but kept it controlled. Detective, I'm 71 years old. I'm a veteran. I've paid my taxes and followed the law my entire life. Jin Park defended me when I was being humiliated. He's shown me nothing but respect and friendship. Whatever else he may or may not be involved in, I don't know about it, and I don't ask. Maybe you should ask. Rivera leaned forward. Mr. Washington, we believe Park is using these community programs to launder money. The funding sources are suspicious. The distribution methods are questionable. If you're involved in administering these programs, that makes you part of a criminal conspiracy. That's ridiculous, Samuel said, but his voice shook slightly. The programs help people. We provide translation services, legal assistance. With money from criminal enterprises, Rivera interrupted. Mr. Washington, I'm going to be blunt. Jin Park is going down eventually. We will build a case against him. When we do, everyone associated with him goes down too. Unless, he paused significantly, they cooperate. Samuel understood immediately what was being asked. You want me to inform on Jin? We want you to help us build a case against a dangerous criminal, Rivera corrected. We want you to tell us about his operations, his associates, his activities. In exchange, we guarantee you immunity and protection. And if I refuse? Rivera's expression hardened. Then we'll have to consider whether you're an accessory to his crimes. Those community programs? We can freeze the funding, seize the bank accounts, arrest everyone involved pending investigation. All those elderly immigrants you're trying to help, they'll lose their services, all because you're protecting a mobster. Samuel felt trapped, the walls closing in. Everything he'd been building with Jin, all the good they were doing, could be destroyed. But informing on Jin felt like a betrayal worse than anything he could imagine. Jin had defended him, trusted him, brought him into his family. You didn't repay that with treachery. I need to think about this, Samuel said finally. You have 48 hours, Rivera said, standing. After that, we start formal proceedings. He dropped a card on the coffee table. Call me. Make the right choice, Mr. Washington. Don't let loyalty to a criminal destroy everything you've built. After they left, Samuel sat in his chair for a long time, his hands trembling worse than usual. Finally, he called Jin. Jin arrived within the hour, alone this time. He listened to Samuel's account of the visit without interrupting. They want you to inform on me, Jin said when Samuel finished. It wasn't a question. Yes. And they threatened to destroy the community programs if you don't. Yes. Jin was quiet for a long moment, staring out Samuel's window at the street where they'd first met, where a brick had come through that same window weeks ago. Mr. Washington, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it clearly. You don't owe me anything. If you need to talk to the police, if that's what keeps you safe, keeps these programs running, I understand. You understand? Samuel repeated, shocked. I understand. Jin confirmed. I knew the risks when I involved you in my life. I knew eventually someone would try to use you against me. I should have protected you better from that, should have kept more distance. He looked at Samuel directly. You're a good man. You don't belong in my world. If working with the police is what gets you out of it safely, I won't hold that against you. Samuel felt his throat tighten. And what happens to you? Jin smiled, but it was sad. I've been playing this game a long time, Mr. Washington. I have contingencies, lawyers, people who know nothing who can run my legitimate businesses. I'll survive. I always do. But the community programs will continue, Jin interrupted. I'll restructure them, find new funding sources, new administrators. It'll take time, but we'll make it work. The important thing is that you're safe, that you don't go down because of me." Samuel stood up, his knees protesting, and walked to his mantel. He picked up the photo of himself in his Marine uniform, 19 years old, skinny and scared but trying to look brave. Next to it was his silver star, the medal he'd earned at Porkchop Hill for dragging 3 wounded men to safety under enemy fire. "You see this medal?" Samuel said. "I got this because I refused to leave my brothers behind. Bullets flying, artillery shells landing all around us, command telling us to retreat. But I couldn't leave them, wouldn't leave them, because that's not who I am." He turned to face Jin. "I'm not informing on you. I don't care what the police threaten. I don't care what it costs me. You stood up for me when no one else would. You treated me with dignity when the world saw me as nothing. That means something. That means everything." "Mr. Washington—" "My name is Samuel," he interrupted. "And you're my friend, Jin. I don't betray my friends. I learned that in Korea, and I haven't forgotten it in 71 years. Jin's eyes were bright with emotion he was clearly trying to control. "You understand this might destroy you? Your reputation, your freedom, everything?" "I understand," Samuel said. "But I also understand that there are things more important than safety, like honor, like loyalty, like standing up for what's right even when it costs you everything." He smiled slightly. "You taught me that, remember? When you defended me in that bank?" Jin stood and walked over to Samuel. He bowed deeply, formally, in the traditional Korean manner. "You honor me more than you know." "We honor each other," Samuel corrected. "Now, what do we do about Detective Rivera?" "We get you a lawyer," Jin said. "A very good lawyer, and we prepare for the fight of our lives." The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Jin brought in Marcus Chen, no relation to Detective Chen, a lawyer who specialized in defending people caught up in organized crime investigations. Marcus was Korean American, sharp as a knife, and absolutely unimpressed by police intimidation tactics. "They have nothing on you," Marcus told Samuel after reviewing everything. "You're not involved in any criminal activity. The community programs are completely legitimate, properly funded through legal businesses. They're fishing, hoping you'll panic and give them something on Park." "So I just refuse to cooperate?" Samuel asked. "You invoke your Fifth Amendment rights and refuse to answer any questions without counsel present," Marcus corrected. "You make no statements. You sign nothing. You give them absolutely zero ammunition." When Detective Rivera called, Marcus answered Samuel's phone. The conversation was brief and decidedly one-sided. "My client has nothing to say to you. Any further attempts to contact him will be considered harassment. If you have questions, direct them through me. If you have charges, file them. Otherwise, leave Mr. Washington alone." Rivera wasn't done, though. He couldn't build a case against Jin through Samuel, so he tried a different angle. He went public. The story hit the local news 3 days later. "Decorated veteran caught up in organized crime investigation." The report carefully avoided direct accusations, but painted a damning picture. Samuel Washington, 71-year-old Korean War veteran, had become involved with Jin Park, known associate of Korean organized crime. Together, they were running community programs that investigators suspected were fronts for money laundering. Samuel's phone exploded with calls. His church, his neighbors, his daughter in Atlanta, panicked and confused. Even people he hadn't spoken to in years called to ask what was happening, their voices mixing concern with suspicion. The worst call came from his granddaughter, Emma. She was 17, smart, idealistic, and she'd always looked up to her grandfather as a hero. "Grandpa, the kids at school are saying you're involved with criminals," Emma said, her voice small. "They're saying you're helping the mob. Tell me it's not true." Samuel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every one of his 71 years. "Emma, sweetheart, it's complicated." "It's not complicated," Emma's voice cracked. "Either you're helping criminals or you're not. Mom says I shouldn't talk to you until this is sorted out." "Grandpa, what happened to you? You always taught me to do the right thing. How is this the right thing?" "I'm helping people," Samuel said quietly. "People who need help. Yes, my friend Jin has connections to things that aren't legal. But the work we're doing, helping elderly immigrants, providing services, standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves, that's real. That matters. But he's a criminal. He's a complicated man who's trying to do some good in the world," Samuel corrected gently. "Emma, I know this doesn't make sense to you right now. I know it looks bad. But sometimes the right thing isn't the simple thing. Sometimes you have to stand with people who are flawed, who make mistakes, because the alternative is abandoning them when they need you most." "I don't understand," Emma whispered. "I thought you were a hero." "Heroes are just people who keep trying to do good even when it's hard," Samuel said. "Even when people don't understand. Even when it costs them. I'm still trying, sweetheart. I hope someday you'll understand that." After Emma hung up, Samuel sat in his chair and cried for the first time since his wife's funeral. He'd survived combat, survived discrimination, survived poverty and loss, and every hardship life had thrown at him. But the thought of losing his granddaughter's respect, of her seeing him as fallen, broken, corrupted, that hurt worse than anything. Jin found him there an hour later, let himself in with the key Samuel had given him for emergencies. He took one look at Samuel's face and knew. "Your family," Jin said quietly. "My granddaughter thinks I've become a criminal," Samuel said, his voice rough. "She thinks I've betrayed everything I taught her." Jin sat down heavily. "This is my fault. I should never have involved you. Should have known Rivera would go public, would try to destroy your reputation to get to me." "You didn't force me into anything," Samuel said. "I made my choices. I knew the risks." "Did you, though?" Jin asked. "Did you really understand what it would cost? Mr. Washington, Samuel, you don't have to keep fighting this. I can make Rivera back off. I have information, leverage. I can protect you." "At what cost?" Samuel asked. "What would you have to give up? What deals would you have to make?" Jin didn't answer, which was answer enough. "No," Samuel said firmly. "We don't negotiate with people who use intimidation and public humiliation as weapons. That's exactly what we're fighting against. Rivera wants to destroy our community programs because they represent something he doesn't understand. People from different worlds working together, finding common ground, making real change. He wants to destroy them because they make me look sympathetic," Jin corrected. "Because it's harder to prosecute someone who's helping elderly immigrants learn English than someone who's just running protection rackets." "Maybe both things are true," Samuel said. "Maybe you're helping people and running protection rackets. Maybe I'm a veteran and a mob associate. Maybe the world isn't as simple as Detective Rivera wants it to be." Jin smiled slightly. "You sound like my grandfather. He used to say that good men can do bad things and bad men can do good things, and the universe doesn't keep score. We just keep trying to do more good than harm." "Smart man," Samuel observed. "He was," Jin agreed. He also said that sometimes the only way to win a fight is to change the battlefield. What does that mean? Jin pulled out his phone. It means we stop defending ourselves and start attacking. Rivera wants a public battle? Let's give him one, but on our terms. The press conference was held 3 days later at Jin's largest restaurant, the one that seated 200 people and had been the site of countless community gatherings. The room was packed with reporters, community members, and curious onlookers. Samuel sat at the front table, Jin beside him, along with Park Yoonji, Mr. Kim from the dry cleaning business, and a dozen other community leaders, Korean, Black, Hispanic, all people who'd been helped by the programs Rivera was trying to destroy. Jin spoke first, his voice calm and controlled. My name is Jin Park. I'm a Korean-American businessman with interests throughout Chicago. I'm also, as Detective Rivera has helpfully pointed out, a person of interest in multiple investigations related to organized crime. The reporters leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. I'm not here to deny those allegations, Jin continued. I'm not going to pretend I'm something I'm not. What I am going to do is tell you about Samuel Washington. He gestured to Samuel, who sat with his back straight, his silver star pinned to his lapel, his hands folded to hide their trembling. Mr. Washington is a 71-year-old Korean War veteran. He's a Purple Heart recipient, a Silver Star recipient. He served his country with honor and came home to a nation that didn't always honor him back. He worked as a janitor for 40 years. He raised 3 children, buried his wife after 46 years of marriage, and did everything right according to the American dream. Jin's voice hardened. And 2 months ago, he walked into a bank to deposit his pension check and was treated like a criminal. He was humiliated, accused of fraud, publicly dismissed because he was old and black and didn't fit someone's image of what a customer should look like. The room was silent now. I was there, Jin continued. I saw it happen, and I intervened because I couldn't stand by and watch a man who'd served this country be treated with such contempt. Since then, Mr. Washington and I have become friends. We've worked together on community programs helping people who, like him, are often invisible to society. Elderly immigrants, veterans, people who work hard, play by the rules, and still get overlooked and undervalued. He paused, letting that sink in. Now, Detective Rivera wants to destroy those programs. He wants to paint Mr. Washington as a criminal associate. He wants to use an elderly veteran's friendship with me as ammunition in his investigation. And he's willing to hurt real people, people who need translation services, legal help, community support, to do it. Jin looked directly at the cameras. So here's what I'm proposing. I will submit to questioning by Detective Rivera. I will answer his questions, on the record, about my business activities, but only if he agrees to leave the community programs alone. Only if he agrees to stop harassing Mr. Washington and the other community members who've done nothing wrong except try to help people. The reporters erupted with questions, but Jin held up his hand. Mr. Washington would like to say something. Samuel stood slowly, his legs shaking, but his voice steady. My name is Samuel Washington. I'm a veteran. I'm a father and grandfather. I'm a man who spent 71 years trying to do right by people, even when people didn't always do right by me. He looked at the cameras, thinking of Emma watching somewhere, hoping she would understand. Jin Park is my friend. He's not perfect. He's not a saint. But he stood up for me when no one else would. He treated me with dignity when the world saw me as nothing. And he's been working with me to help people who are just like I was, invisible, undervalued, forgotten. Samuel's voice grew stronger. Detective Rivera wants me to betray my friend. He wants me to inform on Jin in exchange for safety, for protection, for my reputation back. But I learned something in Korea that I haven't forgotten. You don't abandon your brothers. You don't betray people who've stood with you in the fight. Not for safety, not for comfort, not for anything. He gripped the table edge. I'm not a criminal. The programs we run aren't fronts or schemes. They're real help for real people who need it. If Detective Rivera wants to investigate Jin Park, that's his job. But using me, using these programs, using vulnerable community members as leverage, that's not justice. That's bullying. And I didn't survive Korea, didn't survive 71 years of fighting for dignity, just to bow down to another bully. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. But Samuel just sat back down, exhausted and terrified and strangely proud. The story went viral within hours. Elderly veteran refuses to betray mob boss friend. The optics were complicated, messy, not easily categorized. Some people called Samuel naive, corrupted, a fool. But others saw something different. An old man refusing to abandon his principles, even when those principles led him somewhere uncomfortable. The community response was overwhelming. Korean business owners, Black church leaders, Hispanic community organizers, all came forward to speak about the programs Jin and Samuel had created, about the real help they provided, about the difference they made in people's lives, and public opinion started to shift. Rivera had wanted to paint Jin as a pure criminal and Samuel as his dupe. Instead, he'd created a story about friendship across racial lines, about complicated people doing good work, about loyalty and dignity in a world that often has neither. 3 days after the press conference, Rivera called a meeting. Not at the police station, at a neutral coffee shop, with Marcus Chen present as Samuel's lawyer and Jin's attorney alongside them. Rivera looked tired. "You've made this impossible," he said without preamble. "The department can't go after your community programs now without looking like we're persecuting elderly immigrants and veterans. The optics are toxic." "Then don't go after them," Jin said simply. "Focus on actual crimes. Build your case against me if you can, but leave these people alone." Rivera stared at him. "You know I can't make that deal officially." "Unofficially, then," Jin replied. "You stop harassing Samuel and the program volunteers. You stop threatening to freeze accounts and seize records, and I won't make your investigation any harder than it has to be." "You'll cooperate?" Rivera asked skeptically. "I'll stop actively obstructing," Jin clarified. "There's a difference." Rivera looked at Samuel. "You understand you're protecting a criminal? That everything he told you about honor and dignity is just manipulation?" "No," Samuel said quietly. "I understand that Jin Park is a complicated man who does bad things and good things, sometimes simultaneously. I understand that he's been a better friend to me than most of the supposedly upstanding citizens who've known me for decades. And I understand that the world isn't as simple as you want it to be, Detective. Sometimes the people we're told to fear are the ones who show us the most humanity." Rivera was silent for a long moment. Then he stood. "I can't officially promise anything, but unofficially, the community programs aren't part of my investigation anymore. As long as they stay clean, stay legitimate, I have no interest in them." He looked at Jin. "But this doesn't mean you get a pass. I'm still watching you." "I'd be disappointed if you weren't," Jin replied. After Rivera left, Samuel and Jin sat in the coffee shop, both exhausted by the weight of the last 2 weeks. "We did it," Samuel said, almost disbelieving. "You did it," Jin corrected. "You stood up at that press conference and told the truth, even when the truth was complicated, even when it made you look bad to some people. That took more courage than anything I've ever done. I lost my granddaughter's respect, Samuel said quietly. Maybe permanently. Maybe, Jin acknowledged. Or maybe someday she'll understand that real integrity means standing by your principles even when they're inconvenient, even when people judge you for it. He paused. My grandfather used to say that children need time to see their parents as human, to understand that being good doesn't mean being perfect. Emma will come around, and if she doesn't, then she'll have missed out on knowing one of the best men I've ever met. Samuel felt his eyes burn with tears he refused to shed. Thank you, Jin, for everything. Thank you, Samuel, for reminding me why any of this matters. 6 months passed. The community programs continued, bigger and better than before. The publicity had brought in donations from legitimate sources, volunteers from across the city, attention from organizations that actually wanted to help. Samuel became something of a local celebrity, the elderly veteran who'd stood up to police intimidation, who'd defended his friend despite the cost. Churches invited him to speak, community groups wanted his advice, and slowly, carefully, the people who'd written him off as corrupted started to see the bigger picture. His daughter in Atlanta called, hesitant but warming. Mom, I think I judged you too. Harshly, she said. I've been reading about the programs, about what you and Mr. Park have built. It's actually really impressive. Does Emma know? Samuel asked. She's coming around. She wrote an essay for school about moral complexity, about how heroes aren't perfect people. They're people who keep trying to do good even when the world makes it complicated. She got an A. His daughter paused. She hasn't said it yet, but I think she's proud of you, Dad. She's just too stubborn to admit she was wrong. She gets that from her grandfather, Samuel said with a smile. The biggest surprise came on a Tuesday afternoon. Samuel was at Jin's restaurant, helping organize a new program for veteran services, when Park Yoon-ji came in with a young woman Samuel didn't recognize. Samuel, Park Yoon-ji said formally. This is Dr. Sarah Kim. She runs the Korean American Historical Society. She would like to talk to you about a project. Dr. Kim was probably 40, professional, and intense. Mr. Washington, I've been documenting the history of Korean American communities in Chicago. One thread I'm particularly interested in is the intersection of the Korean War generation, both veterans and immigrants, and how those connections have evolved over decades. That's fascinating, Samuel said, but I'm not sure how I can help. You and Mr. Park represent something unique, Dr. Kim explained. A black veteran who fought in Korea, forming a genuine friendship with a Korean American whose grandfather survived that war. You've built bridges not just between individuals, but between communities that often don't interact. I'd like to document your story. Oral histories, photographs, records of the community programs you've created. Make it part of the permanent historical record. Samuel looked at Jin, who shrugged with a slight smile. It's your story as much as mine, but I think it's worth telling. I think, Samuel said slowly, that maybe the world could use more stories about people who shouldn't be friends but are, about complicated people doing good work, about how the lines between good and bad aren't always where we think they are. Exactly, Dr. Kim said. So will you do it? Yes, Samuel said. I will. The oral history project took months. Samuel and Jin were interviewed separately and together. Park Yoon-ji shared stories about her family's experience during the war. Other veterans, both black and Korean, talked about their memories. Community members spoke about the programs, about what they meant, about how two unlikely friends had built something that mattered. When the exhibit opened at the Korean American Historical Society, Samuel stood with Jin, looking at photographs of themselves alongside images of the Korean War, of Chicago's changing neighborhoods, of the community programs they'd built. "You know what's strange?" Samuel said. "6 months ago, I was just an old veteran trying to deposit a pension check. I had no idea any of this was coming." "Would you change it?" Jin asked. "If you could go back, knowing what you know now? All the complications, the investigations, the publicity, losing Emma's respect for a while?" Samuel thought about it carefully. "No," he said finally. "I wouldn't change it. Because this..." He gestured at the exhibit, at the community members gathered for the opening, at the documented proof that their friendship and their work mattered. "This is real. This is important. This is worth all the complications." Jin smiled. "My grandfather would have liked you." "I wish I could have met him," Samuel said. "Tell me about him. Tell me what he would have thought about all this." So Jin did. He told stories about his grandfather surviving the war, immigrating to America, building a life from nothing, about the values he'd instilled: honor, loyalty, the importance of standing up for what's right even when it costs you, about how he'd always said that the bonds forged in hardship were stronger than blood. "He used to tell me that America was a country of unlikely friendships," Jin said. "People from everywhere, speaking different languages, believing different things, but finding common ground. Finding reasons to stand together. That's what made it special," he said. "Not that everyone was the same, but that different people chose to be connected anyway." "He was right," Samuel said. "We're proof of that." As the exhibit opening continued, Samuel watched the crowd. Young people, old people, Korean, Black, Hispanic, white. People who probably would never have met if not for the programs he and Jin had created. People who were learning that connection was possible across every line society drew. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Saw the article about the exhibit. Looks cool. Maybe I could visit Chicago next month. I'd like to meet Mr. Park. And Grandpa. I'm sorry I didn't understand. I think I do now." Samuel showed the text to Jin, who read it with a warm smile. "Your granddaughter sounds wise," Jin said. "She gets that from her grandfather," Samuel replied, and they both laughed. As the evening wound down, Samuel and Jin stood outside the museum, watching the city lights. "Thank you," Samuel said quietly, "for standing up for me that day at the bank, for bringing me into your world, for trusting me." "Thank you," Jin replied, "for reminding me that power without purpose is just tyranny, that respect and dignity matter more than fear, that some connections are worth protecting, even when they're complicated." They stood in comfortable silence, two unlikely friends, knowing that their story wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in a world that often felt divided, disconnected, and broken, that reality mattered. Samuel thought about the check he'd tried to deposit all those months ago. $47,000 that was supposed to fix his house, pay his bills, give him security. He'd gotten all that eventually, but he'd also gotten something he hadn't known he needed. A friend, a purpose, a reminder that dignity was something you claimed for yourself and defended for others. And in the end, that was worth more than any check could ever be. Subscribe if you believe in the power of unlikely friendships. Comment below about a time someone unexpectedly stood up for you. Like this video if you believe dignity has no age limit and respect has no color line.